Bronwyn James's husband, Doug Fung, died of COVID-19 back on October 29th, and she joins me now from North Vancouver in British Columbia. Nice to see you, Bronwyn James.
Thanks, Rosemary.
And my condolences on the loss of your husband. I know that he had a cancer diagnosis, that he went into hospital because he was getting some treatment and radiation to deal with some brain swelling for a brain tumor. But tell me what happened to Doug once he was released, Bronwyn.
Well, actually, the day before he was released from hospital, I noticed that he was panting and sort of out of breath constantly. And I mentioned it to one of the doctors, but because his diagnosis had been lung cancer, they just assumed that that was part of that illness. So no one really thought to test him for COVID. And it wasn't until like 5 days later when I became ill and got tested. The minute they told me I had COVID, it just all made sense. Why all of a sudden Doug's symptoms had changed and why he seemed to be going downhill in front of our eyes at home. So,
where do you think Doug contracted COVID? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, you can't be 100% certain, but he was in hospital for 11 days, had symptoms the last day he was there. So I assume it was in the hospital. But there's so many contacts in the hospital. It could have been someone who delivered his food. It could have been someone visiting the patient in the next bed. Could have been a nurse, anywhere. Yeah.
And then not only, so you realized that Doug had COVID, you tested positive for COVID, your daughter tested positive for COVID. So you couldn't be with Doug when he passed away. You weren't with him when he had to go back to hospital.
When he went back to hospital, the physician called and said that Doug wasn't likely to survive the COVID. He had nothing to fight it with. Late afternoon, they called and they said they'd gotten special permission for me to go in and see Doug. Okay. They gowned me up, told me not to touch anything, took me up the back staircase and into Doug's room. So I was so grateful that I did have some time with him. The next morning, the nurse called and he said, I'm sorry, but I just saw Doug take his last breath. And that was it. So he had a nurse with him, I know that, and I'm so grateful for that caring nurse, but it wasn't his family.
And I know because of all this, Bronwyn, too, that because you had COVID and your daughter had COVID, but your son, Derek, did not, and I guess isn't and couldn't be with you. And I can't imagine how hard that would have made everything. I mean, it just seems like so many challenges through all of this. What was it like to not have Derek or not have him near you?
It was heartbreaking. I really felt for him because at least Jill and I had each other, and we could comfort each other. But Derek, I know the night, that evening after Doug passed, I got a call and Derek was at the top of the driveway and he said, I just had to come and be near. So we waved from the door. It was just like something out of a movie. It's not like something that really happens to people in real life. It was, my heart broke for him. I just felt so bad. And he had to wait 2 weeks before he could be with Jill and I.
We are all seeing the numbers rise across the country, Bronwyn, and we see, the Prime Minister and Premiers begging people to follow instructions, to not see other people. Maybe Doug would have been okay if he hadn't got COVID. Maybe he would have fought off the cancer as I know he hoped to do. What would you say to Canadians who are watching right now?
I would just say, please wear a mask. It's such a small gesture. And you don't know that person you walk past in the supermarket or just pass on the sidewalk or in the doctor's office or wherever. They may look healthy, but they might have someone at home who's immunocompromised, and you're putting them at risk for what, a mask? That would be my message.
Let me end, Bronwyn, on just asking you about Doug. We were running some pictures there as we were talking. He looked like maybe he was a bit mischievous from time to time, or charming. But tell me what he was like.
Doug was was actually very quiet, but he had a wicked sense of humor. And I mean, trying to find photos of him was impossible because every photo that I did take of him, he was pulling a funny face or doing something silly. So he was quiet, but you're right, mischievous, and he had a great sense of humor. He was very intelligent, had so many interests in life and so many plans for the future. So, yeah, he was a wonderful person.
Well, I'm glad you got to spend some time telling all of Canada about him, Bronwyn. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I wish you good health going forward. Thank you so much for making some time for us this morning.
And thank you, Rosemary. Thank you.